Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. This time, we're going to be looking at some excerpts from Anachronism.
Oh, yeah?
It's a book by James Carrion, and it really digs into some really strange events and technology from
Yeah.
like 1946 to 1947.
Okay.
And stuff that seems totally out of place in time.
Out of place and time, yeah.
Yeah, so he calls these anachronisms,
Mm-hmm.
and, he makes this kind of wild argument. What if some of these events, like, were actually staged? Almost like,
A magic trip.
like a magic trick, yeah.
Yeah, and the target audience for this trip,
Whoa.
Joseph Stalin.
Stalin. I mean, he was known for being a liberal.
Paranoid.
Yeah.
It's putting it lightly.
Right.
I mean, this was the dawn of the Cold War. Tensions were so high.
Yeah.
And Stalin was just obsessed with getting his hands on advanced weaponry.
Right.
So Carrion is arguing that someone was deliberately exploiting that paranoia,
Oh, wow.
feeding Stalin carefully crafted misinformation
Wow.
to basically try to manipulate his decisions.
So, okay, paint me a picture here. Like, what kind of anachronisms are we actually talking about?
Well, imagine you're Stalin in 1947. You're looking at American newspapers. You're just desperate for any hint of a new weapon, right?
yeah.
And then, boom, you see this ad. It boasts about this weapon approaching the atomic bomb in effectiveness.
Whoa. I mean, that would definitely catch your eye, especially if you were already, like, on edge
Absolutely.
about, like, falling behind.
Exactly. And that's precisely what Carrion suggests actually happened.
Really?
He thinks this ad was bait,
Wow.
carefully placed to draw Stalin's attention, right?
Wow.
And this coincides with a top-secret conference that Stalin was holding in Moscow.
Secret conference. What were they discussing?
They were discussing an advanced aircraft,
Hmm.
something very similar to what the U.S. was experimenting with at the time.
So it's like someone knew exactly what Stalin was worried about.
Yeah.
And they're like dangling these.
They're dangling these technological marvels in front of him,
Yeah, to distract him
almost as a distraction.
from something else.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's being led down this, like, path.
Carefully constructed path.
Yeah. But who is doing the leading?
Who's the mastermind behind the curtain,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Well, Carrion calls them Rosetta.
Rosetta.
He thinks this was maybe a group or a network of individuals carrying on the legacy of wartime deception and these code-breaking organizations.
Right.
But before we get to Rosetta,
Yeah.
there's another character we need to introduce. Eugen Singer.
Okay.
He was this Austrian scientist.
Okay.
He was working on a bomber design, the America bomber.
America bomber.
This thing was designed to skip across the atmosphere,
Whoa.
potentially hit targets across the globe.
I mean, that sounds terrifying.
It was a concept that would have kept any world leader up at night.
Yeah.
And remember that secret conference Stalin was having?
Yeah.
A paper based on Singer's bomber was actually the main topic of discussion.
Wow, so Stalin is fixated on this America bomber,
Yeah.
but he doesn't have the scientist who designed it. So what does he do?
Well, being Stalin, he resorted to some pretty extreme measures.
Okay.
He ordered his son, Vasily,
What?
and a Soviet scientist
Mhm.
to kidnap Singer
No way.
and bring him back to the USSR.
You're kidding. He had him kidnapped.
You can see how Stalin's paranoia was just fueling these crazy decisions.
Wow, a kidnapping. This is already sounding like some kind of Cold War spy thriller.
Yeah.
But hold on, didn't you say that newspaper ad was about a superweapon?
Oh, right, about that.
What happened with that story?
Well, that ad wasn't about a bomber at all.
What?
It was actually linked to Project SEAL.
Project SEAL.
This was a joint U.S.-New Zealand project focused on creating artificial tsunamis as weapons.
Wait, tsunamis? Now that's just wild.
It is pretty wild.
So why was information about Project SEAL twisted
Yeah.
to sound like some kind of super bomber?
Well, this is what Carrion calls chicken scratch, mixing truth with fiction to make the whole story believable. It's like hiding a lie within a truth. And he thinks this was all part of the deception.
Oh, wow.
Another way to manipulate Stalin's perception.
To keep him on edge.
Keep him guessing, keep him on edge, exactly.
Wow.
Remember, the goal was to control the narrative,
Yeah.
to feed Stalin very specific information that would lead him down a path
A path beneficial to...
to someone else.
Wow, this is blowing my mind. Stalin's terrified of this imaginary superweapon,
Right.
and this Rosetta group is just expertly pulling the strings. This
Yeah.
is like peeling back layers of an onion. I'm starting to wonder if everything I thought I knew about the Cold War is just wrong.
And we're just getting started.
Oh, no.
Remember those ghost rockets reported over Scandinavia in 1946?
Oh, yeah.
Carrion wants you to consider the possibility that those were also part of this grand
Oh,
deception.
are you serious? The ghost rockets too?
Oh, yeah.
But those were, oh boy, this is going deeper than I expected.
It goes deep.
Okay, folks, we're just scratching the surface here. When we come back, we'll dive into those ghost rockets and see what other pieces of this puzzle Carrion's uncovered. So stay with us. Okay, so ghost rockets.
Yeah.
For anyone just tuning in, we're talking about James Carrion's book, Anachronism.
Right.
He's arguing that some major Cold War events might have been staged to manipulate Stalin.
And one of the most intriguing examples he gives are these so-called ghost rockets. Sighted over Scandinavia in 1946.
Right. Hundreds of reports, even claims of crashes.
Yeah, it had everybody on edge.
Right, because after World War II, the race was on for rocket technology.
Absolutely.
I mean, finding a downed rocket would have been like striking gold.
Yeah, especially for the Soviets, who were a little bit behind at that point.
Right, so these mysterious rockets appearing over Scandinavia, it just fueled the paranoia.
It really did.
Newspapers were going wild with speculation.
It was frenzy.
About secret Soviet weapons programs.
Yeah.
But, you know, if the Soviets were truly testing these rockets, you'd think there would be some evidence, right?
You would think so, right?
Like debris from a crash.
Exactly.
I mean, we know from a real German V-2 rocket that crashed in Sweden in 1944, there's tons of identifiable debris.
Absolutely.
But here's the thing. Despite all those sightings and crash claims, no physical evidence of these ghost rockets was ever found.
Not a single fragment.
That's what makes Carrion so skeptical.
Yeah.
Okay, so no physical evidence.
Right.
What else is Carrion pointing to?
Well, he highlights the fact that while public pronouncements, especially from Sweden, hinted at Soviet involvement, the classified assessments from U.S. intelligence, they painted a different picture.
Oh, really?
They were pointing to things like natural phenomena, misidentified aircraft.
Oh, wow.
Even meteor showers.
So while the public is freaking out about Soviet rockets, U.S. intelligence is like, hold on, everybody, maybe it's just some shooting stars.
It's a pretty interesting contradiction, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then you have this Swedish Air Force officer, Stig Wennerström.
Okay.
He claimed to have inside information confirming the rockets were Soviet.
Oh, wow.
But later on, his credibility was questioned. Carrion suggests Wennerström might have been spreading disinformation.
Oh.
Possibly at the behest of Rosetta.
A possible double agent. This is getting more and more intriguing.
It is.
But why stage these ghost rocket sightings in the first place? Like, what was the point?
Well, Carrion believes it was all part of a larger deception.
Okay.
A way to manipulate Stalin's perception of the West's capabilities. He had to mix real events with fake ones. To make the whole story believable.
Wow.
He calls this technique chicken scratch.
So it's not just about spreading lies.
Right.
It's about carefully, like, weaving those lies into a fabric of truth. Got to make them harder to unravel.
Much harder to unravel.
And that brings us to what Carrion believes was the real target of this whole operation. Soviet codes.
Soviet codes,
Hold on, we're going from ghost rockets to code breaking.
I know, right?
How are those two things even connected?
It's all about manipulation.
No.
Carrion argues that Rosetta deliberately planted specific information in the media, knowing that Soviet intelligence would pick it up.
So they're trying to control the narrative not just for the public, but for Soviet spies as well.
Exactly.
Wow.
They knew the Soviets were listening.
Yeah.
And they wanted to exploit that.
Okay.
Now, during World War II, the U.S. and Britain had become really good at code breaking.
Right.
They cracked the German Enigma code.
Yeah.
And the Japanese Purple Cipher.
Right.
And they were eager to apply those same skills to the Soviets.
Okay, but how do you use ghost rockets to crack codes?
Think of it like this.
Yeah.
You give someone a puzzle.
Okay.
But secretly, you control which pieces they put together first. Rosetta knew that the Soviets were intercepting and decoding Western communications. So they started planting specific keywords and phrases related to the ghost rockets.
Okay.
The fake superweapons.
Right.
All those stories they were feeding to the media.
So they're essentially manipulating the Soviets into using specific language that in their coded messages.
Precisely.
They were trying to force the Soviets to use predictable words and phrases that Allied code breakers could then use to help break the rest of the code.
Exactly.
And here's where it gets even more interesting. The Soviets made a critical error.
Oh.
They unknowingly used duplicate code pages
What?
in their one-time pads,
Oh, no.
which were supposed to make their messages unbreakable.
Wow, so a security flaw
Yeah,
that played right into Rosetta's hands.
you got it.
Because of this error, those carefully crafted messages
Yeah.
about ghost rockets and fake superweapons,
Right.
they became a gold mine for Allied codebreakers.
Wow.
But there's one last piece to this puzzle that sealed the deal.
Okay, what's that?
The 1946 press wireless strike.
A labor strike. What does that have to do with international espionage and code breaking?
Well, it might seem unrelated,
Yeah.
but this strike actually disrupted international news transmissions.
Okay.
And you know what that meant?
What?
Soviet intelligence had to rely even more heavily
Oh, wow.
on those encrypted telegrams
Right.
to get information back to Moscow.
Telegrams full of information about ghost rockets and superweapons.
Exactly.
Information that Allied codebreakers could now easily decipher
Right.
thanks to the Soviets' codebook blunder.
It was the perfect storm.
Wow.
A combination of carefully planted disinformation, a critical security flaw,
Yeah.
and a seemingly unrelated labor strike
Oh.
that all came together
Yeah.
to give the Allies a major advantage in the intelligence war.
This is incredible. It's like something out of a spy novel.
I know, right?
Except that might actually be true.
It could be.
But if Carrion is right, what are the implications? I mean, this is about more than just a few ghost rockets.
Right.
It suggests a level of manipulation
Yeah.
that's pretty unsettling.
It does raise some serious questions
Yeah.
about the nature of truth and how easily it can be manipulated,
Mm-hmm.
even on a global scale.
Yeah.
I mean, if they could do it,
Yeah.
then what's stopping them from doing it now?
That's a chilling thought.
It is.
Okay, folks, we need to take a quick breather to process all this.
Yeah, take a deep breath.
When we come back, we'll explore Carrion's conclusion.
Okay.
Who was Rosetta?
Yeah.
And what ultimate impact did they have on history?
Stay tuned.
Don't go anywhere. All right, so we've uncovered this web of deception. Ghost rockets, fake superweapons, manipulated media reports, and a Soviet code-breaking blunder.
Yeah. It's a lot to unpack.
It really is. And at the center of it all is this mysterious group, Rosetta.
Right, Rosetta.
But who were they? I mean, we're talking about a massive, massive operation here. It would have taken a lot of resources, a lot of coordination, and some serious, serious secrecy.
Well, Carrion doesn't believe Rosetta was like some formal organization,
Okay.
with membership cards and a secret handshake. He suggests it was more of a loose network of individuals,
Okay.
many of whom had honed their skills in wartime intelligence and deception operation.
Oh, okay.
Think of it like an alumni association for Cold War spies and codebreakers.
An alumni association for spies. I kind of like the sound of that.
Yeah.
But if they weren't taking orders from some shadowy government agency, what motivated them to take on such a risky operation?
That's a great question.
I mean, this whole thing could have blown up in their faces spectacularly.
Absolutely, it could have.
Yeah.
Well, Carrion believes their primary motivation was patriotism.
Okay.
They saw the Soviet Union as a genuine threat,
Right.
and they were willing to use any means necessary to protect the U.S. and its allies.
Right, because this was the beginning of the Cold War.
Exactly. This was a time of immense fear and uncertainty. Nuclear weapons were on the scene.
Right.
The stakes couldn't have been higher.
Yeah, you're right. They were operating in a world where the line between right and wrong had become very blurred.
Exactly.
So a group of patriotic spies operating in the shadows, potentially rewriting history.
Potentially, yeah.
It's like something straight out of a Hollywood movie, but surely with so many people involved, someone must have talked.
You'd think so, right?
Yeah, how did they manage to keep this whole thing under wraps for so long?
Well, that's the thing about successful deception operations, right?
Yeah.
They rely on absolute secrecy.
Right,
And Rosetta clearly had a culture of silence.
right.
The people involved understood the risks
Yeah.
to themselves and to their country if they revealed what they knew.
Oh, absolutely. Plus, we have to remember the compartmentalization we talked about earlier.
Right, right.
Not everyone in the intelligence community was in on the plan.
Many people were working on pieces of the puzzle without realizing the bigger picture.
It's mind-boggling how they managed to keep everyone in the dark.
It really is.
But it also makes you wonder what else might be hidden in the historical
Oh,
record.
yeah, absolutely.
If this level of manipulation was possible then, what else might they have been capable of?
That's the question Carrion wants you to ponder. He's not just telling a fascinating story. He's challenging us to think critically.
Right.
about the information we're given, to consider the possibility that the official narrative might not always be the whole story.
So what does this all mean for us today? Why should we care about this potential forgery of history from over 70 years ago?
Carrion's analysis really highlights the immense power of information control, right?
Right?
And its ability to shape not only perceptions, but the course of history itself.
Yeah.
It forces us to ask, if they could manipulate Stalin so effectively back then, what's stopping someone from doing the same thing today?
Ooh.
In our world of instant communication and social media,
Right.
the potential for manipulation is even greater.
It's a sobering thought. We like to think we're in control of the information we consume, but this deep dive into anachronism suggests otherwise.
It certainly does. And that's the real power of Carrion's book. He's not just presenting a theory, he's encouraging us to be more discerning consumers of information.
Okay.
To question our assumptions.
Right.
And to always consider multiple perspectives.
Yeah.
In a world where information is more abundant than ever, it's also easier than ever to be misled.
Well said. This deep dive has definitely given me a lot to think about.
You too.
I'm going to be looking at the news and historical events with a much more critical eye from now on.
I think that's the best takeaway we could hope for. Carrion's book serves as a reminder that truth is often more complex and nuanced than we might initially believe.
Yeah.
And that the search for that truth is an ongoing process.
So true. Well, folks, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for listening, everyone.
But before we go, I want to leave you with one final thought. If this group, Rosetta, could manipulate events so effectively during the Cold War, what does that say about the role of deception in shaping the world we live in today? Are we still being manipulated in ways we don't even realize?
A good question.
And if so, who's pulling the strings? Keep those questions in mind as you navigate the ever-shifting landscape of information. Until next time, stay curious.